so welcome to another deep dive. You ready to get into it? Today we're looking at a connection that might surprise you at first.
Interesting. What's that?
The link between emotions and creativity.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there are definitely some strong opinions about that.
Right. Like, are they helping or holding us back?
Yeah.
But we're going to see what the book Wilia has to say. That's emotions are your creativity in English.
I'm really curious to see what they have to say. I mean, emotions, I think people often think they get in the way of creativity. You have to be more logical, right?
Yeah, maybe. But this book seems to be arguing, like, instead of being roadblocks, emotions could actually be, like, rocket fuel for creative breakthroughs. Like, what if they're not the enemy?
Interesting. I like that analogy. But before we go any further, I think maybe we should back up a second. What do we even mean by creativity?
Right. It's like, does everyone have their own definition?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the book we're looking at actually addresses that right up front. Like, it breaks creativity down into two main things: novelty and effectiveness.
Novelty and effectivity.
Yeah. So for something to be truly creative, it can't just be like new.
Yeah.
It also has to be valuable. It has to actually solve a problem.
So, like, you could have tons of wild, out there ideas, but if none of them are actually useful.
Exactly. That's not really creativity, at least according to this book.
I see.
They even talk about, remember Lou Sixson, the science fiction writer?
Oh, yeah. The three-body problem, right?
Yeah, well-
Huge fan.
Well, he actually tried writing while drinking. He thought maybe this will unlock some extra creativity.
Oh, wow.
But actually, it did the opposite. His writing totally suffered.
So it's not just about, like, quantity. It's about quality, too, right?
Yeah. And, not to go too off topic, but it also kind of shows that focus and discipline are important too, right?
Yeah, even for a genius like him.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. There's this idea that kids are just naturally more creative than adults. I remember reading about it, like, our creative peak is at age 7 or something.
Yep. I've heard that too.
What does the book say about that?
Well, it tackles that head on. And, it says that while kids definitely excel at what they call mini creativity.
Mini creativity.
Yeah, like finding clever solutions and everyday stuff, kids stuff. But when it comes to making, like, big breakthroughs, the book says adults actually have the advantage.
Really? So why would that be? Like, aren't kids supposed to have these, like, super imaginations free from, like, all the logic and stuff we adults are stuck with?
That's what a lot of people think, right? But the book points out that actually to be really creative in those big fields, science, art, tech, usually need years of knowledge. Like, to innovate, you got to know the field.
Right. So it's not just about crazy ideas. You need the skills to make them real, make them happen.
That's what the book seems to be saying.
So maybe we're actually underestimating how creative adults are.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've busted some myths about creativity. But let's get to the heart of it, emotions.
All right. Yeah. Getting to the good stuff.
We've all felt blocked before, right? Or like the ideas are just flowing.
Yeah.
How much do our emotions really affect our creative output?
The book digs into some really interesting research about this, and it kind of it challenges the simple idea that happy equals creative. It says the relationship's more like, those inverted U shapes.
Like a graph, an inverted U shape. Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
So basically, moderate emotional intensity, whether it's positive or negative, can actually help creativity. But if your emotions are too strong, either way, it can mess things up.
So too much excitement can be bad. But, like, too much anxiety can also be bad.
Yeah, that's what the research says. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're energized but not overwhelmed.
Okay, now that makes sense. It's like people who work well under pressure.
Yeah.
A little bit of stress can be good.
Exactly. Like a deadline can make you focus, but if it's too much pressure, forget it. You're blocked.
I'm starting to see how this applies to so many things. All right, so are certain emotions better for creativity?
Interesting question. And yeah, the book explores that. And what it says is, well, research suggests that specific emotions can actually play, like, specific roles. Like positive emotions, excitement, joy, even like a healthy dose of ambition. Those can fuel brainstorming, getting those first ideas out.
So if you're in a rut, maybe a bit of optimism could help.
Yeah, precisely. But when you need to, refine those ideas, see if they work, make sure they're actually good.
Well, a bit of negative emotion can be surprisingly useful.
Wait, what? You're saying anxiety or even self-doubt could be good?
It might sound strange, but yeah. It can make you more critical, look at things from different angles.
So those critical voices in my head, maybe they're not always bad.
Maybe not. Think of them as like your internal quality control.
Okay, that's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, the book uses this example of a team designing a new product, like when they're just brainstorming. A fun, light atmosphere is great, but then when it's time for, like, prototyping and testing, they need constructive criticism.
So it's not about ignoring certain emotions. It's about understanding when each type is useful and like maybe even using those negative emotions to make things better.
Exactly. But here's where things get even more interesting. The research suggests that, get this, feeling both positive and negative emotions at the same time. Well, that could be like a creativity superpower.
Whoa, hold on. You're saying that feeling happy, anxious at the same time can be good for creativity.
That's what the research suggests. It might feel counterintuitive, but think about it. When we have mixed emotions, we're forced to think more deeply. You got to deal with the complexity, right?
Hmm. I guess so.
The book uses the example of starting a new job. You're excited about the opportunity, but also anxious about proving yourself right. And that mix can actually lead to really creative problem solving.
Yeah, I could see that. You're out of your comfort zone, but in a good way.
Right. It challenges this whole idea that you need to be purely positive to be creative. Maybe embracing that complexity is the key.
I wonder if some of the most creative people throughout history were the ones who were really good at handling a lot of different emotions.
That's a fascinating thought, and it actually leads us to another really interesting concept from the book: emotional creativity.
Emotional creativity. Okay, you've really got my attention now. What is that exactly?
Well, it's not just about being creative with your emotions. It's about being creative about them.
So instead of letting our emotions control us, we can learn to, like, be creative about how we deal with them.
Exactly. Emotional creativity is about finding new and effective ways to express and process the whole range of human emotions in a way that benefits both you and the people around you.
Okay, but this is starting to sound a little abstract. Can you give me an example? Something concrete.
Think about stand-up comedians. They take stuff that could be negative, heartbreak, failure, awkward situations, and turn it into something funny.
Oh, yeah. I see what you mean.
They're not just expressing those emotions, they're actively shaping them into something new, something engaging.
Right. They're using those raw emotions as fuel for their creative expression.
Yeah.
And they make themselves feel better, but they also connect with the audience in this really powerful way.
Exactly. And the book actually breaks emotional creativity down into three parts: novelty, effectiveness, and authenticity.
Okay, so novelty, I get that. It's like expressing your emotions in a fresh way.
Yeah.
But what about effectiveness? What does that look like when we're talking about emotions?
Good question. So in this case, effectiveness means that, like, your creative expression is actually doing something positive. It's helping you process your emotions in a healthy way. And maybe it even inspires or helps other people. It's not just venting, it's using your creativity to make something good come out of those feelings.
Makes sense. And authenticity, I'm guessing that means being genuine, not just putting on a fake smile.
Exactly. You have to be real.
Okay, so how do we actually get better at this emotional creativity thing? Are there specific things we can do? Or is this more of just, like, a concept?
Oh no, the book has some practical advice. It emphasizes the importance of having a variety of experiences. Like, the more you get out of your comfort zone and try new things, the richer your emotional vocabulary becomes. It's
Mhm.
like expanding your palette of colors as a painter.
I like that analogy. So trying new things, meeting new people, traveling, all of these can make us more creative in how we express ourselves.
Absolutely. Don't underestimate stuff like drama or role-playing either. They can be fun ways to practice expressing different emotions in a safe environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Get comfortable with being vulnerable, maybe?
Right. And maybe most importantly, be open-minded and reflect on your own emotional experiences. Don't judge them, just observe them.
You mean like don't get mad at yourself for feeling a certain way? Just try to understand it.
Yeah. The more you understand your own emotional landscape, the more creative you can be in navigating it.
So it's not about pretending we don't have negative emotions. It's about understanding them
Yeah.
and learning how to express them in a healthy way.
Exactly. It's a journey. And that journey can lead to a more fulfilling and creatingly vibrant life.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground. And I feel like we're just getting started with this topic. I'm excited to dive even deeper into the practical applications of emotional creativity.
Me too. There's so much more to explore in this book. We'll get into those practical applications after a quick break. Stay tuned.
So, before the break, we were talking about emotional creativity. It's like not just feeling your emotions, but actually using them to make something new.
Yeah, like instead of just being controlled by how we feel, we can get creative about those feelings, use them for something good.
I love this idea of our emotions being like raw materials for creativity. It's like we have all these feelings inside us and we can mix and match them, create something amazing. But how do we actually DO that? Like, where do we even begin?
Well, the book talks about this, and a big thing it emphasizes is mindfulness. That's like a foundation for emotional creativity.
Okay, mindfulness. I've heard that word a lot, but what does it actually mean when we're talking about emotions and creativity?
So mindfulness is about paying attention to what's happening right now in this moment, but without judging it. When it comes to emotions, it means just noticing them as they pop up, not trying to push them away or say whether they're good or bad.
So it's like being curious about your own feelings, not getting swept away by them, but just observing them.
Yeah, exactly. The more we practice that kind of awareness, the more we start to get to know our emotions, like what triggers them, what patterns do they follow, how do they affect what we think and do.
And once we understand that, we can choose how to respond. Instead of just reacting without thinking, we can take a moment and decide how we want to express ourselves.
You got it. Mindfulness creates that space between something happening and our reaction to it. And that's where creativity can happen. It's like we hit the pause button on autopilot and decide to steer for ourselves.
I'm starting to see how mindfulness is like the groundwork for emotional creativity.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've got that foundation, but then what? How do we take those feelings and use them to make something creative?
Well, think about all the ways we already express emotions. Words, actions, art, music, movement, even just our faces and how we hold our bodies. Emotional creativity is about playing with all those ways of expressing ourselves and finding what feels most real, most impactful for us.
So like, if I'm feeling frustrated, instead of yelling at someone, maybe I could write a poem or go for a run or even have a calm conversation with the person who's frustrating me.
Exactly. You could even express that frustration through dance or painting. It's about finding what helps you work through those feelings in a healthy way.
You know, thinking about it, I realize I probably get stuck in the same ways of expressing my emotions. Like, I rely a lot on words, but there are all these other possibilities I haven't even tried.
Yeah, I think we can all benefit from branching out, finding new ways to show how we feel. The good news is there are tons of different ways to do it. It's not about finding the right way, it's about finding what works for you.
That's a good point. It's about being ourselves and figuring out what feels most natural. But emotional creativity isn't just about our own emotions, right? It's about other people's feelings, too.
Absolutely. It also has to do with empathy and understanding how other people feel, validating those feelings.
So it's like creating a space where people feel safe sharing their emotions, even the tough ones.
Exactly. When we really listen to each other and try to understand, we make things more compassionate, we connect better, and our interactions are more genuine.
This makes me think about how we handle disagreements. Instead of getting defensive or trying to shut down the other person's feelings, we can use emotional creativity to find a solution that works for everyone, one that respects how everyone feels.
Exactly. Conflict doesn't have to be a fight. It can be a chance to grow closer, understand each other better, and build stronger relationships. Emotional creativity can help us have those tough conversations with more grace and empathy.
Okay, it's all clicking for me now. Emotional creativity isn't just some vague idea. It's a way to make our relationships better, handle tough situations, and live a more fulfilling life.
Yeah.
It's like a superpower we all have, but forget to use sometimes.
I like that, a superpower. And just like any skill, the more we practice emotional creativity, the better we get at it. We build up those emotional muscles and get better at speaking the language of feelings.
All right, so let's do a quick recap. We talked about mindfulness as a foundation. We talked about finding different ways to express those emotions. And we talked about how empathy and validation are so important when we're dealing with other people. Anything else we should keep in mind as we're trying to get better at this emotional creativity thing? Any traps we should watch out for?
One really important thing to remember is emotional creativity isn't about pretending we're always happy. It's not about hiding our true feelings. It's about embracing the whole human experience, the good and the bad.
You mean it's okay to feel sad, angry, frustrated, even heartbroken?
Of course, those are all normal human emotions. Trying to pretend they don't exist just makes them stronger.
So emotional creativity means acknowledging those feelings, letting ourselves feel them, and then finding healthy and creative ways to work through them.
You got it. It's about respecting the whole range of our emotions.
It's like those emotions are trying to tell us something.
Yeah.
And if we pay attention, we can learn from them. But how do we know if an emotion is trying to teach us something useful or if it's just, noise?
That's a great question. And that's where mindfulness comes in again. The more we practice observing our emotions without judging them, the better we get at understanding what they mean. We start to see patterns, like how certain situations or people trigger certain emotions.
It's like we become detectives of our own feelings, looking for clues and figuring out how our emotions work.
Exactly. And sometimes those difficult emotions can actually lead to our biggest creative breakthroughs.
It's like when a musician writes a song about heartbreak, or a writer channels their anger into a book that makes people think.
That's it. Pain can be a powerful force for creativity, as long as we don't let it consume us. The trick is to honor those feelings while also using them to grow and change, to feel them fully without letting them take over.
So it's not about dwelling on negative emotions, it's about channeling that energy into something bigger. But sometimes when you're really going through something tough, being creative feels impossible.
You're right, and it's really important to be kind to ourselves in those moments. Sometimes just coping with those big emotions takes everything we've got. It's okay to not be creative in those moments. Sometimes the best thing we can do is just let ourselves feel what we feel and give ourselves time to heal.
That's an important reminder. It's about balance. Sometimes we need to process our emotions, and sometimes we're ready to use them for creative energy.
Right. And remember, emotional creativity isn't always straightforward. There will be ups and downs, moments of inspiration and moments of frustration. It's all part of the process.
It's a journey, not a destination, right?
Exactly.
Well, this has been really insightful. I feel like we're really starting to get a handle on this whole emotional creativity thing and how it can change our lives.
Yeah, me too. It's really fascinating to think about how it all connects to the creative process. Like, we often hear artists and innovators talk about getting into flow state,
Yeah.
that feeling where you're so absorbed in what you're doing that everything else disappears.
Oh, yeah. I love that feeling. Time just melts away and you're completely in the zone. It's almost like a creative trance.
Exactly. And there's research that shows that those flow states often involve a mix of positive and negative emotions.
Wait, really? So even when we're feeling that incredible creative flow, there might be some anxiety or frustration in there too. That doesn't seem to make sense.
It does seem strange, right? But maybe that's part of what makes it so powerful. That mix of feelings keeps us on our toes, pushes us to do our best work.
I see what you mean. It's like those bits of frustration or self-doubt actually help us improve our ideas, make us think outside the box and come up with something truly original. They balance out the pure joy and excitement so we don't get complacent.
Yeah, you're getting it. It's about understanding that even those negative feelings can be valuable. They can guide us and help us grow creatively.
So the next time I'm feeling stuck or frustrated when I'm trying to be creative, maybe I shouldn't fight it. Maybe I should lean into it and see if I can use that energy to create something new.
Exactly. It's a totally different way of looking at it. Those emotions aren't the enemy, they're part of the process.
This is really inspiring. I feel like we're learning how to embrace all our emotions and use them to be more powerful and creative.
I feel it too. And, it's incredible to think about how we all have this ability for emotional creativity inside us. And we can develop it, make it stronger just by practicing. The more we use it, the better we get at it.
Absolutely. And the more we let ourselves feel those emotions, the better we can use them to live a more real, meaningful, and creative life. So, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to challenge our listeners. What's one small thing you can do today to tap into your own emotional creativity? Maybe it's trying something new, like journaling or dancing. Or maybe it's just taking a few moments to really pay attention to how you're feeling without judging yourself.
Whatever it is, go for it. Explore your feelings. Use that energy to make your world a little brighter, a little more genuine, and a little more you.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of emotions and creativity. We'll be back after a quick break to wrap things up. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into emotions and creativity. I feel like we've been on this amazing journey exploring all these ideas.
We have, yeah. From those myths about creativity to like how powerful mixed emotions can be. And then that whole concept of emotional creativity, it's been a lot.
It really has. It's like we've peeled back all these layers and found this whole world of creativity hidden inside our emotions.
I like that, a hidden world.
Hmm.
And now the question is like, how do we actually use it? What can we do in our everyday lives to get better at this emotional creativity thing?
Right. That's the big question. It's all well and good to talk about it, but what are the actual steps?
Well, based on what we've talked about, I think one of the most important things is to create a space where our emotions can just be,
Yeah.
you know. a safe
So
space.
not judging our emotions, not trying to make them fit in some perfect little category.
Exactly. It's about creating a space where we can feel those emotions fully, without shame or fear. Like maybe that means setting aside time to think about how you're feeling. Write in a journal. Talk to someone you trust. Create a place where you can be honest with yourself about what's going on inside, even if it's messy or uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's so important, especially because we live in a world where everyone's telling us to be positive all the time.
Hmm.
We need to let ourselves feel the whole range of human emotions,
Right.
even the ones that people think are bad.
Totally. And that's where emotional creativity can help, right? It's about finding healthy ways to express those emotions, turning them into something good, something that helps us grow and connect with other people.
So instead of pretending those emotions aren't there, we can transform them into something beautiful, something meaningful, something that makes people laugh. Those emotions have energy, right? And we can use that energy to be creative.
You got it. And what I love about this book is that it gives us this really empowering message. It's saying we don't have to be controlled by our emotions. We can become the masters of them, use them for good, to be more creative, connect with people, and grow as individuals.
I love that shift in perspective.
Hmm.
It's like instead of seeing our emotions as the enemy, we can learn to ride those waves and use them to fuel our creativity.
Exactly. And, it makes me think about the creative process itself. A lot of artists and innovators talk about getting into a flow state. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah. That feeling where you're so focused on what you're doing that everything else just fades away. Time flies by.
Right. It's like you're totally in the zone, completely absorbed in the creative
It's
process.
almost like a creative trance, yeah.
And what's interesting? Research has shown that being in a flow state often involves both positive and negative emotions.
Really? You mean even when you're feeling that amazing creative flow, there might be some anxiety or frustration mixed in? That just seems so strange to me.
And it does seem a little odd, right? But maybe that mix is actually part of what makes flow state so powerful. That little bit of tension, that push and pull between different feelings, it keeps us engaged and helps us reach new levels of creativity.
Okay, now that you say it that way, it makes sense. It's like those little bursts of frustration or self-doubt are actually helping us to get better. They make us question things, think outside the box, and create something truly unique.
I think you're right. So the next time you're working on something creative and you start feeling stuck or frustrated, try not to push those feelings away. Maybe try to lean into them a little and see if you can use that energy to make something new and interesting.
I'm going to try that. I love this idea of not being afraid of those negative emotions. They're not the enemy.
Exactly.
Wow, we've learned so much about mindfulness, mixed emotions, flow state, and honestly, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, we have. But I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is that we all have this amazing capacity for emotional creativity. It's inside all of us. And the best part is, it's something we can practice and get better at. Just like any skill, the more we use it, the stronger it becomes.
So true. And the more we allow ourselves to feel all of our emotions, the more we can use them to create a life that's more authentic, more meaningful, and just more creative. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have a challenge for everyone listening. What's one small thing you can do today to explore your own emotional creativity? Maybe it's trying a new way to express yourself, like writing in a journal or dancing it out. Or maybe it's just taking a moment to be mindful of how you're feeling without any judgment.
Whatever it is, I hope you give it a try. Embrace those feelings, explore them, and use that energy to make your world a little brighter, a little more genuine, a little more you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of emotions and creativity. Until next time, keep creating.